Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
TV award season is just around the corner, and we, as always, have had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with so many fantastic artisans who make these shows that we watch come to life. And as always, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because you're listening. You're here. You're with us. And if you are, keep staying with us and hit subscribe. Hit that like button. Give us the old 5-star rating. Activate your notifications on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, God knows we would appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, and probably a few other places that I'm forgetting over at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. But finally, and I do dare say, most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness and pay us a visit. On this episode, we're back on Apple TV Plus with Masters of the Air, which again is such a fantastic show. If you don't have Apple TV Plus or have not checked out this show yet, what's stopping you? Go do it. It really is fantastic. But as with all things in this world of show, in this business, the right director of photography, the right cinematographer can make or break a show like this, because it's so dependent on the visuals and being immersive, and especially having to put us in with the pilots in the cockpit and just all sort of the technical challenges therein. It's really a wild show and just a fantastic one to watch. But we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with one of the cinematographers, one of the team, someone on the cinematographic team, as it were, for Masters of the Air, the one and only Jac Fitzgerald, and she's got a number of different credits on shows like True Detective, films like The Peanut Butter Falcon, and a bunch of different stuff. She's working hard and she's working a lot, which at the end of the day, between you and me, that's all that matters as far as I'm concerned. But we asked her about getting the job, the nature of the show, and just all the challenges therein for a fantastic conversation. But like I said, if you haven't already checked out Masters of the Air, especially with Emmy Awards season not too far away, check it out. It's worth it, man. It's such a good show. But first, enjoy our talk with Jac Fitzgerald, because between you and me, we had a pretty darn good one. All right. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for the time today. I really do appreciate this, and congratulations on your work on Masters. It's a great show.
Yeah, thank you. It's super exciting, and it's really nice to hear its reverberations around the world. Knowing that we're here in America and it's a very American focused project, but getting feedback from people in the UK, they feel very attached to it, because obviously it's based in the UK, and then I have family in New Zealand who are just raving. People in New Zealand are raving about it too. So
no, I'm curious, because obviously on this, you weren't the cinematographer for the whole run. You were just for a couple of episodes, and I'm curious, on a job like this, do you have to jump in kind of midstream, or are you sort of already on the team as they're doing their pre-prep?
No, I jumped in, so I did episodes 5 and 6. My friend Adam Arkapour, who was the DP for Block 1, invited me to be involved in the project, and lovely Anna Bowden and Ryan Fleck, who are the directors that I worked with, they're a directing team. They said, yep, come along. So Anna and Ryan and I jumped in Block 1. People had already started filming, but they had many setbacks just due to COVID and such. So we kind of had an elongated prep. where we did, get to see what was going on, well in advance. And then we ended up shooting our work, block 2 finished our work, and then block 1 still had not finished their work. And Adam had to take off and do some family stuff. So I ended up taking over on a bunch of block 1's work.
No, I'm curious, does that kind of change your creative process when you're sort of having to, at least on a timeline kind of standpoint, like sort of having to sort of mimic or ape that's what somebody else did?
Well, I mean, I guess I was always, because I was very aware that our episodes 5 and 6 were episodes that were a bit of a departure from the kind of the storyline of, by that stage, all the characters and the base life and thought habits had been well established. And now the world of the storylines were branching out a lot more. So we were always very aware that we were going to be the conduit between what had already been and then what was to come. So I feel like episode 5, was well rooted in their language and their look, and then we branched out on that afterwards. When I went back and did the work with Carrie Fukunaga for block 1, it was easy to fold in at that point because I've been on the project for so long. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. No, it's one of those things I've always been kind of curious about, because it definitely feels like you at least have to be sort of familiar with the other person's work to be able to sort of get the same feel. But you're right. I mean, especially with 5 and 6, you had a bit more rope to sort of do your own thing. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we were watching their rushes, their dailies every day. So we were definitely immersed in what it was that we were trying to follow on from, and also very aware of what we wanted to do ourselves to make our episodes different.
For sure. No, totally. Now, I mean, this is going to be a bit of a loaded question, but it's one I have to ask because, I mean, I think I know, but it's one of those things that I don't actually know. Like, can you tell me what the job of actually working on a second unit for a shoot does? Because again, like I said, it's one of those things people assume they never quite know for sure.
And what is this in relation to?
Because I go through a lot of your credit work. I mean, like for like Rebel Moon, True Detective, you've been DOP on a lot of second unit stuff.
Yeah. So second unit is generally first and foremost kind of clean up from what main unit can't get through. And maybe that's already scheduled well in advance of like, okay, we've got big action stuff. We're going to do the work with the actors, and then we'll give second unit the work of cleaning up all the stunts and all the fights and the things that kind of take a lot of coordination on the day, explosions and things like that. What often happens as well is as the schedules get more and more jammed, you end up taking over whole scenes, and that will also depend on how willing the main unit director is in allowing someone else to direct actors. So for example, on True Detective, we ended up with a bunch of work that was with the actors, with the main the leads, and we were shooting entire scenes that were made the cut. They weren't just bit parts of scenes.
Right. So. No, I'm curious, especially on something like Masters, because obviously there's so many sort of great moments where you've got all these guys essentially in a metal box pretending that they're flying a plane. I can imagine shooting that creates sort of logistics in and of itself, because I mean, it's got to look big, but you're still in this very kind of confined space. Can you talk to me a little bit about maybe sort of the challenges of getting a great shot, especially when you don't have a lot of space to work with?
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously the plane itself was built to scale. Right. So normally, in most projects, you'd upscale a little bit to give yourself more room, or you'd have wild walls built into a set. So you can, take areas out to get the camera to, and it was decided very early on that wouldn't be the case. That they should, build it to exact replica scale. And interestingly enough, a lot of our characters, a lot of humans these days are bigger than they were in 1940s. So they had that to contend with as well. We had many a person in camera grip and electrics and wardrobe and costume and sound smash their heads against, bits of metal and rip their jackets on things. We had mapped out fairly early on where good places for the camera was. We also, invented shots that, when you're in pre-production and you're walking around the plane and you're getting yourself in and like squeezing yourself and go, oh, that's a good angle. And then you realize you need something more. Yeah. Then we started like taking windows off planes and things like that. But we were very much aware that we should stay within the plane as much as possible.
I mean, it does feel like in many ways sometimes the job of a cinematographer is very much problem solving, because I mean I can imagine, I mean obviously on one end you're working to either serve the showrunners or the director's vision, or but at the same time it's got to be a question of, hey, can we move this wall, can we move this thing? Like I can imagine there are so many elements of what you do that is literally just trying to find every single angle to look at something at.
Yeah, and I mean, to an extent, you're reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
You're trying to reinvent the wheel, but also not pay attention to the camera work. So,
Right.
You don't want the camera to steal the shot away from the actors. So, I mean, essentially, for the pilots are two people sitting in a car, essentially. It's like, where can you put the camera? You can put the camera in only a certain amount of places to convey what you need to convey at that moment. I mean, obviously we had lots of frontals, we had lots of profiles, but then there's an extraordinary amount of stuff going on outside the plane. So, especially for our battle work in episode 5, it was like, oh my gosh, this is gigantic what they're dealing with out there in terms of the enemy fire and the devastation of that fleet. So we wanted to, we needed to see over the backs of the pilots and out to the world beyond.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, is the creative payoff for you when people don't realize the work that you did? Because I mean, I can imagine on one end, there's obviously going to be these great, beautiful, swooping shots, but at the same time, it's like if someone doesn't realize you had to jury rig something to get this shot to make it work in XYZ sort of order, I can imagine that's probably more of a payoff for you than, say, sort of the obvious things.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't want people to. I want people to love the visuals, but I don't want them to feel like now they're out of the storyline because of what's happening with the camera. I mean, and especially in a story like this, I mean, we were all so humbled by just the remembrance of what all those pilots and all those people, the people of the soldiers in any war, what they give of themselves. So, and just the realization that these were young men, I mean, they were boys and they were throwing themselves into a terrifying situation. So yeah, we really like, okay, this is their story. We have to tell it faithfully.
Does that all come down just to sort of the old adage that it takes a village to make these things, and everyone's just sort of on the same page? Because again, this would have been one of those things where it could have easily delved into something sort of bigger or grandiose, but it, like, the whole show felt big, but it never lost focus of the individual, which is why I think people are gravitating to it so well.
Yeah, I think it's essentially dealing with a very small amount of people within a huge machine, which is the army. And that was the nice thing, but we also killed off, because that's what the reality of
exactly.
This is all obviously completely based in reality, so characters were dying and disappearing all the time. So
not a spoiler, it was war, it's fact. So yeah.
But yes, indeed, it does take a village. We often joke that the film industry is quite like the military, because you have to, you've got certain sergeant majors that drill you in, and you've got protocols and things to do. But then at the moment, the heat of the moment, everything can change.
No, I mean, I'm curious, and this is something, it might be a loaded question, it's one I always like to ask. Like, was there a moment or something that got you into this business? Because I mean, I go through your list of credits. I mean, you were a focus puller for Peter Jackson on the Lord of the Rings movies and all that sort of fun stuff. Like, I'm curious, was there a movie that made you want to get into the business, or a moment, or what was that sort of foot in the door moment, or kind of light bulb going off moment for you to really want to start to
Um,
do this?
it was, I was living with a couple of people who were going to film school, and we had a big warehouse as our shared house. And they came home one day with a 35 BL and a Steadicam, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" I had no idea about film cameras. I like taking photographs, but I had no idea, about the bigger technology behind making a movie. And I'd say that moment was seeing them move and dance and play around our warehouse with the Steadicam with the BL on it. Like, ah, okay, okay, that's it. Yeah.
Well, I like that, but I mean, it's one of those things. I always love to hear how people stumble into the business, and I mean, just in watching this show again, this is such a perfect marriage of, like I said, scope, but emotion and drama, and it's really sort of the perfect definition of genuine storytelling, because we're roped into a world, but we never lose focus on the lives that are affected sort of on a daily basis by, obviously, the horrors of war, which is what uh, everyone is really focusing on and really managing to sort of pull from what ends up being a really beautiful show at the end of the day. And I mean, that's, again, I just, you really should be proud of this one. I think it's one of those things that's going to last. It's one of those things that's going to be sort of remembered sort of more and more on as people keep talking about it and more people get to see it. But I mean, just again, Jac, congrats on the work, and thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's great. Yeah. No, no, no. It was a total pleasure. Um,
Absolutely. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.